So we're rolling. Again, I would like to introduce everybody to our seminar today, Visual Thinking, Start Inspiring Your Students by Using Visuals. And our presenter is Lynn Strand. She's the Creative Director of Behavioral Marketing Specialist and President of her own marketing firm, Positive Impact Partner. Her secret sauce is her extensive background in cognitive and behavioral psychology, which gives her an unusual degree of insight into how people think, act, and buy. Her unique approach really does inspire customers to take action and shortens the sales cycles with positive, measurable results. So without any more babbling on by me, Lynn, it's all yours.
Thank you, Marty. Okay, everybody, so first of all, this is the first time I've done one of these using CCC Confer. So you'll just have to send me positive thoughts along the way. My designer always recommends that I put in this wonderful 3 headshot thing so that it gives you guys a little bit of a laugh. Yeah, this is what I look like when I'm talking and presenting. Another bit of background that I think may be helpful for you is today I'm not showing you examples from education. I'm showing you examples from other areas, other areas that I've seen through my experience. And so basically I started by working with gifted kids, and then I went to developing programs for the most severely disabled folks in the state of California, and then going into marketing. And yes, it all makes sense. So the people I got to work with in the marketing arena appreciated the whole behavioral approach, because we were looking at what's the desired action that we want someone to do, which is the same thing as what you do in education, right? You want your students to perform something a certain way or have their eye go more a certain direction and then have them take action as a result of that. So that's a lot of the examples I'll be showing you today have also those pieces in mind. The other thing, I will often go on to tangents about not just visual thinking, but using all the senses, because usually when I present to folks or when I'm developing marketing pieces, I'm looking at more than just the visuals. I'm looking at the overall experience and how someone would receive that piece within their environment. So, so you will hear some of that sprinkled in as well, but I will try to keep it focused on visuals. I'm hoping that by the end of this session, you will go, wow, I get it, and here's some different ways of thinking of it. And so I'm hoping it'll be a good introduction to some of the concepts and how you can implement it in the things that you're doing. So in the end, you'll have a cheat sheet, because I like cheat sheets. So a little fun instead of bullets. I'm going to give you the boring slide first. This is what we're going to cover today, what visual thinking is. I'm going to show you examples from multiple disciplines. I'm going to share ideas as to how you can put it to work in your courses. And I'm going to give you a few resources that I thought were interesting to help get you started on the visual thinking highway. And so these may be things you want to share with your colleagues. So the first thing I want to cover is that when we're talking about visual thinking, words is also part of that. So for example, if we go here into definitions, right, we typically share at the beginning a definition. And often we share that in words. So here's a definition that I liked about talking about visual thinking. Now, what was funny was the definition itself, no matter where I looked online, was usually presented in this way, and that they gave you some words. So there's 2 tips that are actually on this page. First of all is using a thought bubble is a way to add a visual to add a little bit more interest for the sake of the people you're engaging with. They're more likely to read it if it's in a thought bubble than if it's just text on the page. So it's a very simple technique, but one that can be very effective. The other one is having a person who is talking to you. So that's why you're seeing a lot of these online entities showing up, or in this case a cartoon drawing that we did for one of our clients, giving a face to the experience. And again, that way it's more like the more close you can get it to somebody really having a conversation and really engaging in a real environment, the better off you are. So that's an example here. So if we go then to the next page, so for example, I've just added her up in the corner with a little thought bubble. Like, what's most important on this page? Visual learning helps students. And here's all the wonderful bullet points as to why. How many of you are familiar with visual thinking? Can you give me a smiley face? I like smiley faces. Familiar with the concept? Okay, so we have some of you have had some some positive experiences with it or some exposure. That's good. That's great. How many of you took the session last week on mind mapping? Wait, was it last week, mind mapping, Marty?
Yeah.
I see a couple smiley faces.
Oh,
yes,
good. We have some return customers.
Awesome. Love it. Okay, good. Because as you do research on visual learning and visual thinking online, most of the links take you to mind mapping. And to me, it's like, well, that's one tool, but not everything. So here we're going to take you forward here. So mind mapping is one of the things when you look up visual thinking you're going to see a lot of. So what I've done is, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Marty, if you could take us over to the YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
the
thank you.
YouTube. Wait just a second.
Yeah, this is just a quick,
what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the link in the chat window, and also I'm going to flip up the YouTube video on your own computers. It'll show up, should show up in a browser window and start playing.
And this video is just a really quick overview of how mind maps work and how you can develop them and the things we can learn by using visual thinking.
And Lynn, you have a question from Melanie. Was this video creating maps in Word, or is it MindJet?
It is MindJet. Thank you for asking. Yes, this actually technically is a little ad for MindJet that they put on YouTube, but I thought it explained the concept so well. There actually are many tools out there for mind mapping electronically, even different apps for your your PDAs. They're all over the place right now, and lots of how-to manuals as to how to learn to take advantage of mind mapping. So yeah, there's a lot of resources out there. I found, this was the neatest thing I found out there about mind mapping, which is basically why I feel visual thinking works. And so here it is, a mind map. And the idea, the bottom line with mind maps is that they're just showing a mind map is not everything. Like, I'm not going to expect you to understand how visual thinking works just by looking at this. It's more of something that you do as you talk through to help people go into the different parts of their brain. So that's always what I'm looking at. How can you get things to go through different channels and create different connections in the brain? What I like about mind mapping is it really plays with different concepts and visuals and words, and then how you use the flow of even using your hand to draw it out. That again plays with your brain in different ways and makes your learning be more fun. So that's pretty much all I have to share about mind maps at this point, but there will be some resources at the end for you on these. So next we go into images, and this is where I have a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun because I've had the pleasure of working with a top designer for the past 15 years who developed a lot of the original Adobe fonts. He did a lot of the logos that are household names, and he's taught me how to apply a behavioral approach to then what you do in really good design. So I'm going to share a little bit of what he has shared with me, and also a little bit about how I do presentations. So this is my big pink heart. When I do presentations talking about marketing and a flow of marketing, I talk about it being like a dating process. And the whole thing is for people to fall in love with your company and want to tell everybody about you and to keep coming back for more. And so we use a big pink heart. Why? Because most people don't use big pink hearts in their formal business presentations. Hence, it has more playfulness and gets people to engage, gets people to laugh, and suddenly my topic is being associated with love, playfulness, and they're also understanding how a sales flow works. Yay! Thank you, Melanie. This is an ad campaign. How many people recognize this ad campaign? Have everyone recognize this? Yeah, yeah. So when this first came out, I had no idea what it was for. And I'm not into electronics. I had no idea what it was for. All I know is I wanted it, which to me was the most powerful ad I have ever seen. Thank you, Melanie. Yes, an iPod. The most powerful advertising campaign I'd ever seen because I didn't know what it was, and I consider myself immune to this persuasion of advertising, but I wanted one. So it was real hilarious. So I was like, it's just a music device, right? But the idea was that the visual gave you a sense of feeling. It brought an extra sense of playfulness. You wanted to get up and dance when you saw these. And so that's a real powerful use of a visual. Yeah, very powerful image. I think one of the most powerful I've seen in a very long time, in a very positive way, which is also what I love. So here's an example of some of the work that we did, where we basically helped a company go from they were a local provider to then they were selling national franchises. And the question that I often ask entrepreneurs when we show this example is, who would you trust with your $1 million housing purchase? And who would you want to buy a franchise for if you lived in San Diego? And we get real consistent answers. that the difference between these two images is like this, the first one that they had when they were San Francisco based only is very nice and local, but it didn't have the strength. It came across a little bit too hippie for what they were looking to do, as far as we are serious about what we do, but we also really care. So I'm going to show you how we took that through, as far as like even making sure that the real estate signs would show up against their competition. What's your impression? Who would you trust with the $1 million purchase? And to make sure that they looked credible within the marketplace. And so that was a way that we used visuals. So then to roll it out, we wanted them to be credible, but they also wanted to have it tied into what's most important to people. And it wasn't really about the house. It was about the experience that they'd have having a healthy home and greener living and also having a smart investment. But it's about the kids and it's about the environment, and that we can have all of that. And a very interesting way of taking a very serious topic about, you know, we're able to seriously deal with your real estate purchase, but that we have a heart behind it. And it goes beyond just being green. It's about really living that healthy lifestyle. So again, by combining visual images, we were able to tell a richer story and also give people a place where they feel confident and secure. So the palette is very soothing so that you relax. So same thing when you started the At One seminars. We have our first slides, and all of us at At One are really into outdoors activities, and really love California landscape. And so we felt it was important to incorporate that, as that when you come for a training, first you relax. It's like, we are here on this mountaintop. Isn't it nice? Okay, now we're ready to learn. So again, it sets the stage by using visuals. So here's another example of what we did with visuals, in that, you know how most of the flyers, when you go to buy a home, are usually set out in a very standard way? We chose a very non-standard approach. We recommended that the agents have playful pictures, not the serious mugshots that you typically see, because they want to be approachable yet serious. They want to be organized and clean yet have a heart. And so that's how we accomplish that, through visuals. So here's another thing I learned about visuals by working with the designer that I work with, is don't make things perfect. make things imperfect, which will give all of us, I know, a big sigh of relief for any of us who are involved in education and trying to do the perfect presentation or the perfect lesson. It's about the imperfections that keeps keeps the attention of your audience longer. So for example, with the Cooler logo, what teases you? And so for example, we have the C that's a little bit tilted and the L goes just below. And then you have a contrast of the colors to play. And that helps your eye stay longer and play with it and process it longer. So imperfection is good. It keeps your brain engaged. So use that to your advantage in your teaching. So here's an example, another thing where visuals make a big difference. This is what I call a bad example of a website, because it doesn't ask me what to do next. It doesn't ask me to contact them. It doesn't ask me to do anything. I really don't care. It just shows recent projects, right? And yeah, they are great, easy to find bad examples. This one was just really good because we're looking at competition for a client. So here's what we did instead for our client. What is the action we want people to take? We want people to call us for an estimate, right? So that was exactly what they wanted to have to do. Well, then ask people, right? But then use visual to make sure that ask happens. So in this case, we use, your good old, big old circle. We also gave them a soothing place for their eye to rest through using the palm trees, because this was in Palm Springs. And then what are the most important things that we wanted people to do? So really helping the eye go towards whatever is the most important thing to do is what we're shooting for here. And that's why this design is better, I would say better, considerably better than the previous one. So now a lot of what I do is integration. How do you put the words and the images together to tell a story? Now some of these some of the things I'm going to share are ugly. Some of them are very amateurish. Some of them are very refined. But I just want to share with you there's different ways of doing it, and you can do it too. So for example, when I talk about elements of a good marketing piece, I'm just using arrows. Arrows! Talk about some of the most simplest things. And of course when you use builds as well in your presentation, that helps too. But in this case, when I do sessions for MBA students, it's like how to teach them, here's where the clear offer goes. Here's where you generate a laugh or interest in the image. Like in this case, we were talking about a very serious topic to security professionals. All that they usually receive is serious blue and gray stuff with no jokes in it, no nothing. That's what those folks receive every single day in their mailboxes. So we purposely did something. They had a tiki god instead show up at their doorstep. So a very different approach, and got the best response ever. And so how I explain this to folks is like using arrows to just point out these are the different areas to accomplish the goals of the direct marketing action, the direct marketing program. So here's another one, how I explain to have a good campaign. It's not just one direct mail piece or pretty pictures. It's how the pretty pictures work together. And so I used arrows to show the flow of you start with this first piece, then 2 weeks later, this postcard goes out as a reminder, then 3 days later, a tiki mug hits their desk with a call from the sales force. So again, it's part of showing a flow. There's a two-way flow on this, and I would do the builds differently. But again, arrows. Arrows and simple things such as even that red hot telephone has gotten so many laughs and attracted so many people's attention when I do presentations, because usually I have above it, the phone is not evil, because most folks who are into marketing are scared to death of sales. So the phone is not evil. The phone is your friend. The red hot phone, it's ready. People want to hear from you, particularly after you've sent them these touches. So that's a way of visually playing with people and getting them to embrace a new concept. So here's another example of where we've used visuals, and I've circled them in the light green here, but what is the most important thing we want people to do at this location? For example, have an impact and join. We want them to join Cooler. We want them to shop Cooler. Then we give them the center section where they're able to play with visuals by rolling over them, and you see there's a -70 there. Do you see where I'm pointing? Does anyone see me pointing to anything?
None.
Okay, good. That's good to know.
No, I
There's
don't.
No pointing.
Let me
That's
see
good.
if I can point.
Okay.
Yeah. Here. That's 70.
Okay,
Is that the one you want?
Yeah. And then if you roll over, on the live site, when you roll over the different, like the swimsuit versus the laptop computer, you would see different amounts of what the carbon impact is of that, of purchasing that product, and then how that can be eliminated if you do it through the Cooler website. So, so kind of an interesting, kind of playful. Again, we use visuals to get people to start playing with the site and engaging with the content. So then on the next one, same thing here. On this website, we did the same thing. We want people to subscribe. We want people to immediately start doing a quick search on properties in their area that may have green features. So again, we're highlighting those areas. That's visually where you want the eye to go. So we use some lighter colors to have that pop out. Here's an example where you don't present the expected. Climate Earth does enterprise carbon accounting, which basically they come in, do a review of the business, identify where's the greatest carbon hits, and what they can do to decrease their negative impact on the environment. Everybody else shows that as people sitting, thinking, and looking at spreadsheets and all of this, or looking at a coal mine or something like that. Instead, what we decided to do was we wanted to give people snapshots, because they had a tool where you could pull up, like within seconds, what the impact of your company probably is. And it was like brilliant. It was like it was revolutionary. And so it was like, let's call it a snapshot. And let's play with it by showing museum with pictures. And so we played with the theme of getting a snapshot, because you get a snapshot and then we can help you identify and dig down deeper as kind of a first step in the sales cycle of what we wanted someone to do. And so again, it was presenting the unexpected in a way that would engage the eye and engage the person for a longer period of time. Here's another one that, again, using visuals. So here's our gal. This is what we originally developed her for. We did quite a few things where we put it in cartoons because it was going for homeowners, helping them understand how to decrease their environmental impact. And the other way that we engaged, again, another sense, because as you know, I have a bias towards wanting to engage all these senses, come visit us and enjoy a cup of coffee. So basically we used visuals to then hone your eye on come visit us and enjoy a cup of coffee to then engage further. So we're asking the people to engage further, and we're using kind of a little bit of using white space as your friend, and then also setting it up in an email and having it be the person who's basically saying this, come visit us and enjoy a cup of coffee. Here's an example we did for Integrity, which some of you may be familiar with. We basically sent a letter where, again, this is a good example. It's called a Johnson box. It's where it's that little box there that pulls extra attention. And it's basically where you often put in the offer. I know you've probably all seen these a gazillion times. It's a very traditional direct mail thing that really works consistently still. So what we did was we sent folks a letter with a puzzle attached. We told them where to go to see it in action and see how somebody actually put the puzzle together, because really it was very difficult to put together unless you did. So, so it was a way of inviting them to come to the website, and here was a puzzle that was sent. So here where you were using a visual of a puzzle, so we had a letter, and then we had a puzzle that was a visual, and we were encouraging them to go back to a website to get the solution. And then we were also encouraging them to play with the puzzle, so to play with what we were talking about. And it was another way of getting more experiential experience. That makes no sense, doesn't it? Here's another example where you use something twisted. This was a way of us talking about wireless technologies. Marty, yes, I know Marty loves it. It's called our Zeek and Zen campaign. But this was for a software development company. They sold a basically software that would help you make the software you were developing secure. Very confusing. But nonetheless, most of the advertising that's done in this space is usually just a list of specs. Oh, Melanie, great question. Yeah,
Oh,
so the
yeah.
idea, again, is to show what is not expected to engage someone longer, and how can you put it in front of folks where they won't be expecting it. So even where there's a person who does presentation training for folks where he encourages them to use more visuals, he starts his presentation by turning out all the lights and talking. Because your visual experience when the lights are out is totally different than when the lights are on. So I thought it was really interesting is do something unexpected, and that then creates a shock to the senses. So so Melanie, yes, thank you. The connection to online learning is exactly the same thing, that basically when we're talking about online learning, or if we're talking about sales and marketing, and I know a lot of folks who are in education, because I was in education too, and thought sales and marketing were the scum of the earth, right? Because they are, right? And now I do it for a living. But it's all about persuasion to something that you think is good. So for example, if I want my student, or in this case, I really loved this wireless security product. I mean, I really did from my heart. How can we get people to engage with it and play with it longer and then want to get involved in doing it too? And it all comes back to persuasion and tapping into the brain from different perspectives. Here's another one that works really well. And here we were playing. Oh yes, we are totally competing. And junk is just a click away. Yes, and you have to keep them engaged. And that's what was so funny about some of these particular examples, was that they went into places where people had a lot of distractions in their day. They had people walking into the office saying, I need you to come fix this and that. And it gave them just a little piece of like, or something silly. In this case, the visuals that we used was about you becoming a superhero in your IT department. And then the other playful part was we were giving away a free hero sandwich and a compliance resource center. But the free hero sandwich to complement it, and again to create a laugh, get them to play with the information. And wherever we can do that for our students, I just think I find that my classes that I do for the MBA students go so much better when they're laughing. And they're laughing and they're engaged because they're not seeing what they expected. They expected to have a boring presentation. Instead, they were laughing and they were doing stuff. And I found that's just the core of what I love about education and what we can do in both education and marketing. Pacifica T, I put this in here because sometimes, she says, her tagline, experience the stillness of tea. Again, sometimes you want to calm the class down. Let's sit for a moment, think about where we're at, what we've been talking about. It's a way to kind of bring everybody's blood pressure down. And again, it's all done through visuals, which is amazing to me. I can almost smell that tea in that picture, and I can feel the texture. And yeah, a range of emotions is very useful, yes, definitely. So here's an example of where somebody is doing teaching, and if you want, you can go, this presentation is a 10-minute presentation. But in this presentation, he shows, it's from TED, so of course it's interesting, but basically he talks about global population growth by starting with a box on the table. And so meanwhile, he's walking around, he's talking to people, and it's so hilarious because he pulls out more boxes and he pulls out more props. Again, he's using visuals, and the people get engaged. Again, it was a 10-minute talk presenting kind of a hard, complicated topic, but in the way that he presents it, and he shows it through the bubbles on his screen, and then also the way he shows it on the table and as he's talking, it's really a neat example. So if you had a chance, go take a look at that as an example. I found it just adorable, and it's often cited as one of the better examples of using visuals to encourage people to think differently and understand complicated concepts in a simple way. Here's, when looking for visual thinking examples like images, this is another way to use visual thinking. So for example, the hierarchy of digital distractions, as we've all talked about. I figured this one would be applicable to all of us here on the call today. But basically, it's about how things will trump. So you see, notice any kind of actual work is way at the bottom of the pyramid, and that, you have Twitter, but then you go up the pyramid, you got iPhone. You get up, it's kind of like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it's a hierarchy of digital distractions. So again, it's a way of visually showing the types of distractions and how important they are. So I thought that was a very cute example for us all to look at in regards to visuals. Here's another example of visual thinking to help people. Visual thinking, throwing it into, in this case, it's for Lyon in France, since France has been a topic today, obviously before the call, about different things that are in season, and how you've got the sun and you've got the rain and you've got the different types of things. You've got the herbs, the vegetables, the fruit, and all of it's organized by color and on a wheel. This is another way of using visuals. Okay, now this I know is an eyesore. Unfortunately, I walked into a company where they had this as their color palette, but this was a way of visually presenting information, and you see these a lot in the corporate world, in that it's a whole calendar over the course of a year. What are the different types of activities going on? So in red, you have your direct marketing campaigns. In orange, you have your web seminars. In yellow, you have the quarterly news, what's coming out as an email newsletter. So every type of marketing activity is coded differently to make sure things are in alignment with different things going on in regards to the conferences, the different places where all the stuff in purple is all the trade shows where we were exhibiting at. And this was a way to share with the rest of the company, yes, there are activities going on, they're going on in phases, and they all tie into something higher. So again, you'll typically see this in corporate, and the students will see this once they enter the job world. Here's another one. Very typical. I put this in here because it's so typical. Every single corporate website these days, particularly in technology, has some type of workflow. And again, this is all visuals. It's all about visuals, where you start, where it goes. Here they have different lines of business, production, color, all of that, how it works through the Kodak process to a finished job. And so I think it's a nice way of presenting information, and then you can walk students through the different types of information. This one I love because if we're all interested in this U.S. data consumption in one day. This might become useful in any of the things you're doing. Again, I liked how it was visually represented. Unfortunately, I couldn't replicate this myself with my skill set unless I called my designer. But I liked the concept of it. I liked how it was like taking the idea of a brain, because that's what we're talking about, data consumption of your brain, and breaking it up into pieces is just a nice visual way to show it. Here's an example that may be hard to see, but it's a Google HyperOffice workflow. And so it's basically got this picture where it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then down below it's got the descriptions. But again, that's visual learning. It's about how you take all that information, you put it into a computer who's going to map where it's supposed to go, and then the little worker bees go out and put it in the right places, and then they end up consolidating it and filing it away for you, and that this is all happening for you. So again, another way of using visual thinking and visuals to tell a story of a flow and making it look simple. And don't be afraid to use hand drawings with this too. Hand drawings are so incredibly effective. Like I could not design that on a computer, but I could draw it out. I could whiteboard it. I could mind map it essentially, do a flow of it. So this is just kind of don't be afraid to use your own visuals. So in review, I wanted to give you kind of a cheat sheet of some of the things that I've shown you more blown out examples of. They're simple tricks. So for example, using your thought bubbles, using a person to make it more of an experience of talking. You have using different visuals such as like a heart, like an emotion type of visual. How you can combine visuals to create a certain effect. We talked a little bit about mind mapping, so you have some examples, and I'll give you some resources for that. About how to tease the brain to make somebody interact with it longer. You want to have your students interacting with your content longer, so how to create things that aren't perfect necessarily, that then create a little play or not what they're expecting. Arrows can be your best friend, and I'm sure all of you are already using that, but it's just a reminder, it's a simple thing, but it works really well. Having the twisted, using visuals in your presentation such as buckets and bicycles. Playing with concepts such as heroes. Puzzles, all of that just engages the brain further. So here's some great resources I pulled together in my search for things that I thought would be useful for all of us. Infographics, I felt had a really good website, a lot of good information about how information works and how to create infographics. Then the mind map inspiration has a lot of great tools on site, and again, most of them are free as to how to get going on mind mapping, and also showing you, I pulled some examples from that site to share with you today, but mind map inspiration was really looking at, well, the title says it, inspiration. Truly there were some really interesting, complicated things that people had already done really cool mind maps on that you may want to look for mind map on something related to your content. See what comes up. It's really interesting. The back of the napkin video overview I thought was helpful. He's talking about his book, but again, the video overview was short and sweet and a great way to get yourself excited about visual thinking, and that, yeah, it can be your own drawing on the back of a napkin, and it's extremely effective. Another tool I threw in here, because when Pat showed me the Jing tool, I just totally fell in love with it, because it's a way to very easily do what I used to pay a designer thousands and thousands of dollars to do for me, to create like a little animation that just shows some real basic things. So I've got the link in there for Jing. And then also my favorite resource is Pat's tools, and the link there, but she's got links to all kinds of things where you can very affordably create visuals and create audio and all of that. Links to all the free resources. I mean, it's just wonderful. And so I'm hoping that earlier in the presentation you got ideas of different ways to use visuals, and then through these types of tools, it's how then you pull it all together in your actual curriculum. So, questions. Would love to hear questions. I know a lot of this was coming from different areas of expertise. Anything you'd like to ask me at this point?
And if you're speaking on, if you're listening on the phone, you can do a *6 to unmute your phone and ask questions by audio, or use the microphone on your audio tools. You'll need to go to Tools and the Audio Setup to make sure your mic is working. Or the chat window, which is easy. So ask us any kind of questions. And Melanie has a question.
Melanie, I love that question. Her question was, any other recommendations for creating visuals other than the ones already listed that could be free? Wow. So if you go to Pat's site, that links to so many ones that are free. I think I would really start there, because those are the ones that I'm seeing used the most, and particularly in education. Yes, it is a big requirement. Lynn, know the name of the program that allows you to type in words. Oh yes.
Yeah, I've got it.
Rayanne, Marty, do you remember? Oh, you just put it up. Okay, Wordle. There you go. Thank you.
I was playing with that the other day. It's a lot of fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun. And basically, to give everyone an overview, it's where you can put in a bunch of keywords, or put in a paragraph about, and then see how it actually shows up as far as the weighting of words, and it visually represents it. But it's only showing the words and colors. One of the interesting things I see about that, though, is now that I've been introduced to it, I'm finding it everywhere. Everybody's using it. So it's going to very quickly not become as powerful as a tool, because it won't engage people just like, oh, they did another Wordle thing. So very quickly that's going to phase out. But for right now, as long as you can get away with it, use it, because it's fun.
And Melanie says it's fun, but she finds it more interesting than her students.
Yeah, exactly.
It is.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so to save a screenshot and edit out the words, Ginny?
Or maybe clean up the image some.
Yeah, because again, when Pat showed us Wordle, she also showed us how to use Jing to actually screen capture it, which was super easy. Free images without cluttering up your computer with cookies. I would have to get back to you on that, because they are changing so quickly. Marty, do you have a recommendation on that?
Yeah, I just put up Creative Commons, and I was playing with that today. Apparently, Creative Commons is working with Google, and you can do Creative Commons searches through Google. And Google has some amazing advanced search options that I didn't even know about until a week ago when I was at the Q conference and I saw that presented. So go ahead and check those out. Let me see if I'll pull up a thing on a Google Creative Commons search and see what.
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead and answer other questions?
And yes, I love, Rayanne, I love your comment about lame academic images. I couldn't agree more. And in fact, when we were doing some of the marketing for @ONE, we were looking for non-academic images because none of them looked like the folks that we know in academia. They didn't resonate with us. So I would recommend that instead of looking for ones in academia, look for ones that aren't. Look for other, I mean again, you know, if I see another person standing at a chalkboard or a whiteboard, or I'm just going to scream. Yeah, and none look like your students, you know, and wear the turbans and sunglasses. Absolutely. So that's where I tend to look in uncommon places. So for example, I'm working on a conference right now where it's a green conference, and so instead of showing your typical kind of, I don't know what I call it, kind of the green hippie pictures, we have like it's basically in the sunset you see raging stands of hands in the air. So a very different approach, and we chose a different name. We're going to call it the Sharing Revolution. And again, because we didn't want to show a picture of who these people are that you'd be sharing with. We want to show that you're part of this crowd that's going towards something that's bigger and more important than anything we've imagined, and how to visually represent that. And it wasn't about showing happy faces. It wasn't about showing happy faces sharing a pasta together. It was about, again, creating what you don't expect. Oh, you guys are sharing so many great resources right now. This is brilliant. I don't know that I can add
I put up
more.
the one for the Google search for Creative Commons. That's one.
Oh, excellent.
And when you save the chat, will you have all the links? Yes. Thanks for asking, because do use the top left image, the one that looks like a floppy disk in blue and yellow, and just choose to save the chat as a text file. Oh, and Marjorie recommends community.articulate.com for images and other e-learning help. And while there's a quiet moment here, I'm going to ask all of you to please take a moment and fill out the evaluation survey. It's short, it's online, it'll only take you a few minutes, I promise. And it should also pop up on your desktop in a web browser, so just fill it out and send it in. Melanie, unfortunately we have to keep in mind accessibility for online learning and using visual resources. Mm-hmm. If there are images, you can always put the image tag in there to describe what you're showing, or better yet, describe the point that you're making with the image. But if it's...
And that's the other thing I liked about the Jing tool, was that you had that ability right in there. It made it so simple.
Any other questions or comments? Jenny likes it. Oh, Margie asked any tips on what not to do with visuals. That's a good question.
Oh, that's a great question. Wow, I always say just don't show me the expected. What to not do with visuals?
Well, one is not to be pornographic or obscene or offending. That
was the only thing that came to mind. Yeah, that pretty much was the only thing that came to mind. You know, I mean, obviously there's the typical things of cultural sensitivities and such.
You have to be sensitive to your audience. Obviously, when you're working with humor, you have to be careful. Not everybody has a sense of humor and doesn't share the same one that you have.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure we all have great stories of that. Yeah, great.
That's a good point.
I hear ya. I hear you. It can be the most time thing. It's almost as bad as going onto Facebook. You can get lost in there for hours on end. And I tell you, I've done it a gazillion times. Again, it's part of finding a good source that you like to go to where you can put in really good search words and immediately get some stuff back that you know you can use. So that's why usually I don't just do a Google search where it is where the rights aren't already done, because then I'm going to end up like, like I often have clients do that. They're like, well, yeah, but we really want a picture of a guy in a hot tub holding blah, 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 blah. And see, I found one, from Russia. That was a private picture that was like, oh, gosh. So I would say just make sure when you, to save time, start with a place where you know you already have rights to use it and you know how to attribute it properly. And then you'll save at least a couple hours right there. And the other thing is to put it down and go, if I had a visual, what would I want it to say? What would I want it to look like? And again, the stock art that's out there is just so wonderful now. I'm just so impressed. And there's also times where to spend too much time looking for the right visual. We once had an ad that needed to get done, like 2-day turnaround on an ad. And usually you would go and you would do a photo shoot, or you would go search for stock images. We needed a hand in a certain position. You know what? My designer took a picture of his own hand, and it worked great. So taking a picture yourself, it worked fine. And that way you don't have to look for the perfect visual. You get something that's going to work for the sake of telling the story you want it to tell.
And you don't have to worry about royalties or permissions if you use your own images.
Yes. And it's nice seeing an ad with my designer's hand in it. It's kind of funny. It's like the inside joke about, yeah, we didn't have budget to do a real photo shoot. But again, it worked.
Any other questions, comments?
Okay, Anne, you've just brought up a great visual.
Yeah. Oh, Jenny says took her computer outside in the windy trees and took pictures. Well, that's an interesting visual.
That's right. Yep.
Oh, I'm thinking back on visuals that don't work. There was some computer company, I don't know when, it was a while ago though, where they had people taking a computer to a beach and sticking the plug in the sand. A lot of us felt like that was an incredibly inappropriate visual. It just made no sense whatsoever.
You talked about it.
Yeah, you're right. We did talk about it. But we were more disgusted. But I guess that's true. If you get a response, you get a response.
Anything else?
I'm just going to flash up a reminder to please fill out the evaluation survey. And nobody has anything else. We're going to go eat lunch or grab something to eat if you haven't already while you were listening to us. Thank you everybody for coming, and at this point I'm going to turn off the recording.